Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and the Bera chain market. Got a lot to discuss today, loaded up for discussion. We've got Bera chain going live today. Airdrop details have been revealed. It included 6.9% to NFT holders and a 0.25% allocation for social yappers. We'll be diving into those tokenomics, those details in just a little bit when we get into the headlines later. We're going to be talking about Ondo Finance as well. They've launched a tokenization platform for open on-chain access to US securities. Sammy will be taking us through the news there. And then finally, Movement Labs founder Rushi announces official advisor position to Thailand government on their digital asset rollout. Very interested in how blockchain founders and governments seem to be coming closer together. We've noticed even World Liberty Fi and the Trump administration kind of in conversations as well with Movement Labs. Very intrigued to see how that plays out. We'll dive into that news later too. We've also got the latest on price action on crypto and NFTs, plus a sponsored segment today from Little Nouns, where we dive into some of the challenges actually today on building out our own business. We've got Legendary and Sammy in the co-host seats today. We're ready to get into it. But just a reminder, friends, that nothing that we say is financial advice. This market is very, very risky. So please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Thursday, 6th of February. Sammy, how are you doing?
I'm good. The YouTube comments never fail to amaze me. Kashmir's shouting me out, saying I'm coming back from retirement, which is funny.
I told you you were going to get it. People were really raising questions, Sam. Thought you made a bit too much money in January. It was probably a profitable month, I can assume. But they were asking that question for sure. How do you respond?
It was purely because I was down under. So like the show was 1 a.m. So I couldn't bring myself. I'm not as young as I used to be. So
fair enough. There were definitely the question. The funny thing was all the timings lined up for people to think that you had made too much money. Like the AICC thing happened. Like obviously AI specifically was really running. So like all of the narratives were able to kind of come together. So
yeah, I think it did crash just at the right time for me to come back. So it makes a lot of sense. But I can assure you,
that's also the point, right? You've joined exactly when it's crashed as well. So we have to put those rumors to bed, or try to, nevertheless. Legendary, what about you? How are things going your side? Thursday, 6th of Feb. How's this month started for you? January was a bit of a crazy month, right? Like if you think back of all the stuff that's happened in January. I mean, we just touched on some of the stuff that Sam was deeply involved in, but like January was a crazy month. Have you had a chance to process that? Is Feb any different for you?
GM, no, I actually have not. It's been insanely fast. Like January passed, I feel like in a matter of 2 or 3 days, and it's the first month, it's already over. I also told you it's the first month, or the first time for me after years and years in crypto, where I'm actually off-ramping to fiat, which is the weirdest thing, the weirdest thing ever. Like we used to have, I don't know, 98% probably of my portfolio on chain. And I'm like, for the first time, off-ramping to fiat, which feels super weird to have money in the bank account and even have money on an exchange, because I'm withdrawing like in smaller increments, and just having money on an exchange is weird for me. Typically, I have probably a couple $100 on Binance, Coinbase, Kraken, whatever. Like just moving money to an exchange feels weird. So it's been a very, very interesting month, not only from the market perspective, but also like from that portfolio restructuring perspective that suddenly got this in real life component. And I'm also pretty happy with myself, because Oxy has noticed in the YouTube comments that I am wearing a polo shirt with a little bear on it, the little ready for the Bera section. Yeah.
Damn, you're getting good at this coordination, to be honest. I did not notice that. Usually I'm keeping an eye out. That's shout out to Oxy for noticing. Shout out to you. Like what's going on? Do you have you made too much money in January? You've got like all this time to consider. You don't need to think about the portfolio anymore. It's just like the fashion decisions are the primary thing.
Yeah, no, I think ever since you started mentioning the TikTok shopping experience, the modern market social shopping experience, and Obviously, Brett has taken a good part of that, and I am left with the AI gadgets. And I don't think I can convert people to buy an AI toothbrush. I'm rather now focusing on the fashion choices instead.
Okay, Sam, this might be news to you, but one of the verticals that we'll be expanding into over time is live social shopping. Like we do have a TikTok account. It's not like we push it all the time. We are creating content there, and I've heard that this is the way media empires are supposed to expand. So Legendary, I thought was going to do AI tech, seems to want to go the fashion route. I'm not concerned. I don't mind. He can just make his own decision. Bread's got like a bunch of tech as well that he's kind of keen on. Do you have a preference here for like what vertical you're gonna sell?
I'm gonna combine the two. So I think like you can actually, I don't know if you saw the video of Dejan Spartan AI going to Amazon and buying shit tickets like toilet paper.
Okay.
So I was thinking you could do that. So you can effectively have like an AI solution that's like a co-pilot that it basically, you put the agent in, it just manages the computer and it goes and does stuff on the internet and you can watch it. So shopping can be integrated into that.
Fascinating. Always with the AI integrations. Okay, sounds fun. That is maybe, I don't know if this is a 2025 plan or maybe a summer plan for the social shopping when hopefully the market cools down a bit. At the moment, we're completely locked in though, so let's be locked in here and now. Starting with the price action, as always, going to the majors first. We've got Bitcoin at 98K. We've got ETH at just going to refresh this just to make sure I've got the right number. Yeah, almost 2.8K. We've got Solana down a few percent, bang on $200 there or thereabouts. Going into the meme coin side of things, we've got Doge down a couple of percent at 26 cents. We've got Pepe down 3%, Trump down 3%. Just scrolling down here, everything looks pretty red, but single digits, so not as disastrous. It sometimes bonks down 4. WIF is down 6. Interesting. The one interesting one to call out probably is Pengu down 11. That's after they announced that burn yesterday, right? Well, I'll mention it again in the Web3 roundup, but they burned almost $150 million worth of Pengu, unclaimed Pengu, I guess. And the token responded by being down 10%. We'll touch on that a bit later too. SPX, Murad's coin, also down 12. I'm looking just at a lot of red here in general. AI16Z down 25 in 24 hours. That's pretty significant. AIXBT also down 16. So AI getting hit maybe slightly harder than the rest of the stuff. That's probably what I'd say, just looking at everything at a glance. Getting into the main headlines themselves, we've got Bera Chain going live today. Legendary's going to dive into that in a bit, maybe throw out some predictions and dive into the tokenomics. Some headline numbers is that 6.9% of the supply went to the NFT holders, which caused one of the rarest occurrences ever, an airdrop announced, and the NFT is actually pumping. Those Bond Bear NFTs, the Boo Bear NFTs, they're all up like 10, almost double-digit percentages in the last 24 hours on the news of how much allocation they were going to get. Second headline, Ondo Finance launches tokenization platform for open on-chain access to US securities. We're finding more and more of these kind of more corporate headlines coming out now. I think we'll see more of that super interesting stuff as well. And then finally, Movement Labs founder Rushi announces official advisor position to Thailand government on their digital asset rollout. We'll be reflecting a little bit on how politics, blockchain, founders are all kind of starting to move in the same circles and what that might mean and what they're seeking to do in Thailand. I think it'll be kind of interesting to dive in a little bit later in the show. Some notable sales from around the space. There were 3 Bond Bear NFT sales for 100 ETH or more. One at 100 ETH, one at 103, and one at 109 ETH. So huge sales there. Legendary, what's going on in the rest of the NFT market?
It's not a bad day for NFTs. Bored Apes up 2%, almost at a 13 ETH floor. Pudgy Penguin stable, 10.64 ETH floor. Ladies, however, down 7%, 4.5 ETH floor. Doodles up 6%, 4.17 ETH floor. Azuki's up significantly, up 11.5%, 3.24 ETH floor after falling to 9 to 8-ish just a couple days ago. But as you said, more significantly, you had that post up in the morning. All the Bera Chain NFTs are pumping up from 9.6 to 17-ish%. So as you said, most people expected maybe 5% of an allocation to to the NFT holders. 6.9 is significantly above that, especially in relative terms. So the NFTs definitely moved on that news as well.
I like it. One of the most interesting conclusions there, I think, is that there must have not been too much insider dealings going on there, right? In the sense that obviously people knew the NFTs were going to be valuable, so maybe people knew that. But the fact that they've gone up as a consequence, maybe people didn't realize the extent to which, or alternatively, degens is just being degens. They saw a 6.9 number, thought that was quite high, and just FOMOing in anyway. So that is that. To get you up to with everything else that's happened in space in the last 24 hours, MicroStrategy has rebranded to Strategy, dropping the micro. I guess if you think about it, the undertaking is quite significant, and micro maybe diminishes it in some way. Next, BlackRock announces the launch of BTC ETP in Europe. I think they're saying that the number's relatively low in comparison to the US, which is maybe obvious, but maybe they can think that there's more growth there. The Pain presale, which raised $40 million of funds, has returned 80%. The Pain account said that they thanked everyone for their overwhelming support, but they do not need that much money immediately. So they're going to be returning 80% and using the remaining 20% to support the launch, providing liquidity, paying listing fees, and helping everyone feel less pain from recent liquidations. So I think people have flipped there to being very bullish now because it's not an excessive raise. MegaETH announced vote for how their highly coveted NFT mint should come to market. If you want to vote, you can do that. You can go to the MegaETH account and say you want it to be a first come first serve mint if your wallet is whitelisted, or do you want a random number generated model? The reasons for one or the other, or the drawbacks, is first come first serve. It's kind of democratic in a sense, but we run the risk of high gas fees and bots sniping the collection, which is a real danger. Whereas with random number generator, it creates a level playing field for all who are eligible and removes the risk of gas wars. The downside is you have less influence over the outcome. And so, it's got nothing to do with how fast you click, and you might not end up with one. So difficult decision to make, but you can vote there right as we speak. Party Penguins burned 13.69% of the supply. That's approximately $158 million of Pengu. And the token responded by going down 11%. I was very surprised by seeing that number. Pengu is now down to around $1 billion FDV, which is obviously much lower than where it came out at, much lower than where a lot of people have been buying it and holding it. So that's the situation there. That is the Web3 Roundup to get up to with everything else. Before we get into the main headlines, boys, is there anything from that roundup that's kind of catching your attention? Sam, let's go to you first.
Yeah, I don't know the extent to which you covered the MegaETH stuff yesterday, but that to me is quite interesting, just because the controversy around, it's an NFT, people not necessarily understanding what it actually was, that it's basically a pre-sale on really favorable terms. So yeah, that to me was just quite interesting, and just seeing the controversy and just seeing the backlash. And I just don't know whether people actually read into it. But to the point around the potential gas war, to me makes sense to do the random number generator. Like, why go through the pain of wasting ETH, wasting money? Just make it as fair as possible, because there'll be a load of bots that effectively try and snipe it. So, or at least if they're whitelisted.
Yeah, I think that is fair. We did go into quite a lot of detail yesterday. If anyone missed the show yesterday, we did like a deep dive with Bread, obviously, who's head of community at MegaETH, always speaking brilliantly about the project and like able to break down exactly what the offering is. We also did like a bit of FAQs, like if we were going to try to FUD this, these are the questions that we would ask. So if you missed the show yesterday, you can catch up on it on our YouTube channel. Maybe that's the best place to go to it because it's timestamped. And then one thing maybe to help people, I'm going to try and be a little bit helpful here, is that, yes, so you've got this vote that's going on at the moment. You can vote whether you think it should be first come, first serve, or if you think it should be a random number generator thing. Just to deal with Tone World's question in the Twitter comments, there's no more opportunities to get access to the MegaETH NFT. I believe that is correct, at least in this first tranche. They're doing 5,000 now. They're doing another 5,000 another time. So in this first tranche, That is correct. There's nothing more you can do. What you can do is check all of your wallets to see whether those wallets have been whitelisted. They did release some details earlier today or in the last 24 hours, which kind of explained some of their criteria. I'm just going to tell you some of them now. We wanted to recognize the following apps. I might show it on the screen as well since I've got it here. So if you did any of these things, or you realize like, oh, there's this wallet that I did some of these stuff, go check it because it might be whitelisted. So you've got Tornado Cash donors, legendary apps like Pendlefi, Athena, Farcaster, Sofamon, Friendtech, Fantasy Top, Unlonely App, Infinex, Joker Ace, and one that I can't pronounce. What is this one? Infini. Foundational protocols like Virtuals, Eigenlayer, Hivemapper, Helium, Trench Warriors like Solana, Hyperliquid. Interesting. So even Solana, I'm not sure exactly how they've whitelisted Solana in some way. NFT communities, Milady, Nounsdao, Kemonokaki, Crypto Dick Butts, Artifact. That's an interesting one to be in there. Maybe feeling for the Artifact community, so get them involved. So look, all of those NFTs or communities or protocols have been on the whitelist. Now, the next thing that's helpful, I hope that was helpful, but I think there's something else to be helpful here. If indeed it is the case that they're going to do a random number generated thing, then you probably need to register your address. Okay, here we go. MegaETH. This is the tweet. I'm going to share this again. This is the kind of stuff that, could just keep it to ourselves because other people don't read, but let's go through it. So they're saying we have two options. You can do the first come, first serve. You can do the random number generator. And then in the tweet beneath, it says, for clarity, registered wallets are whitelisted participants who have accessed the whitelist checker and either verified ownership of an EVM address or associated an EVM address with a non-EVM whitelist. This subset is what will be eligible for RNG selection. Registration is entry. So the way I read that, I haven't actually double checked this, right? So I don't know if my initial reading of that is correct, but I did a checker. It told me that I was eligible on some wallets. And I think the thing that I need to do based on that information is I need to go and now do something. I need to go register them. I've checked it, but I haven't registered it. And if I don't register it based on what I've just read, I am not going to be in the random number generator thing if that is the path we go through. So that is the thing I wanted to point out to people. Or at least that's my instinct. I need to go check it, obviously. But I just want to point that out for people because don't you to get wrecked if if you think that you're eligible and then you don't register it, and that is something that you needed to do. I'm pretty sure that would be a sad thing for you guys. So hope that's helpful. Sam, maybe coming back to you there. Any additional thoughts on the MegaETH stuff before we keep it moving?
Yeah, I mean that whole process just reminds me of like how are you trying to get the right community members into your community? And we saw recently with the Bera stuff, there was an allocation for creators, or I think it was like Kaito Mindshare or something like that. And that to me is like historically there's been this like airdrop farming meta, and there was a big one about a year ago. But I do think that's evolving, and actually using these algorithms to work out who they want to have in there based on their contributions is super interesting. I think that's going to develop further, especially over the next year. And I think a lot of these projects that are kind of getting access to these dashboards or these Yapper boards are going to start rewarding those communities fairly heavily. So it's something I'm keeping an eye out for.
Yeah, very interesting. I definitely agree with that. There was also this tweet from the Pudgy Penguins, like official account replying to the Kaito account. Seems like some kind of integration going on there. Don't know what that is at the moment. I did a little speculation on the timeline, but yeah, I think people really, really like the social engagement, the social data that Kaito is unlocking. And we'll even touch on that more when we go into the Bera chain stuff. But Legendary, want to come to you first before we get into the Bera chain stuff, before we get into the main headlines. Anything that's catching your attention here, whether it's to do with MegaETH or anything else in the roundup?
Yeah, there's one thing in the roundup, but there's also another number that's catching my attention, which I'm watching in awe. And it is our live streaming number. Actually, we are 26 minutes into the show and have almost 3K people, 2,920 people watching on video, got another 170 in the spaces. So we are, we have more than 3K people watching in right now, which is pretty insane. And the other number from the roundup that is catching my attention is definitely the pain pre-sale. What a genius move that is. So you demonstrate the ability that you can raise this absurd amount of money, get the whole timeline talking about that because it's such a large pre-sale and everyone's like sending their Solana to that. You have people like Dingaling saying, oh, I sent 5,000 sold to that pre-sale. And then everyone's like wondering, okay, can this even go higher? There's way too much money in there. And then you say, nope, we actually don't need that much. Let's cut everyone by 80%, return the money. And everyone's like, fuck, I don't have enough exposure to that. I need to somehow get more pain because there was 5 times more interest in that because 80% has been returned. Like, what a genius move, both from the, I don't want to call it tokenomics because that's going a bit too far for a meme coin, but from the token distribution and pre-sale mechanism, as well as from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah, you're right. It is actually really good. The thing that I thought immediately, though, when reflecting on that is like, yes, initially, like that is really, really good. I just thought now what's going to happen is that that's going to become part of the conversation, right? Like when something goes really high, people will start speculating, like, don't worry about it. They could just refund a certain proportion and then teams won't do that. Or like it's not necessarily a guarantee, right? But it'll be something that people can speculate on, like, oh, don't worry that we've sent 50 million. Don't worry about it. They'll just refund 80% and then we'll send it like the pain pre-sale. But yeah, I think it's really, really smart. I don't know if that was like intentional necessarily at the beginning. I don't know if they would have known that they were going to raise that much, but I think it's really nicely positioned now. Annoyingly, I didn't send anything because there was too much sent, and now I'm feeling the FOMO. So yeah, interesting stuff there. Right, let's keep it moving. I want to get into interesting segment today. This is the sponsor segment talking about how we're building out our business. It's called Publish and Profit. We're routinely reflecting and sharing how we're building this stuff out. Legendary just mentioned we're hitting over 3,000 views on the show now, which is awesome. We're building this stuff out for quite some time now. But today, in this week's entrepreneurial segment, Publish and Profit, we want to explain some of the challenges and roadblocks in our plans and how we plan to overcome them. This segment is brought to you by Little Nouns, an expansion DAO based on the famous Nouns DAO, who fund cool creative endeavors which can proliferate the Nounish meme. So we told you guys recently about this huge plan to mint an NFT per week to commemorate an interview with a top guest each week. We minted more than 600 NFTs of our first interview with Bing from MegaETH, and I'm still super committed to this plan. However, there has been one crucial roadblock, which we did not necessarily foresee in advance, and that is the founders are very, very busy and might need to reschedule from time to time. And because our show is live, it means that they can't say, oh, sorry, can we do it 2 hours later that day? It literally means we have to reschedule for multiple weeks later because the plan was to do it just once per week on a set day. And the week after, there's someone already scheduled. So it kind of creates this challenging scenario. So my first learning here is that a model which depends very, very deeply on someone who is not deeply incentivized to attend basically doesn't work. And I kind of already knew that. And it's why when me and Legendary started the show more than a year and a half ago, I never wanted to invite anyone else on the show because I never wanted our audience to only attend because of other people. But that leads to our second learning, which is either we need to increase the incentive, like make people really, really feel that we've got to attend, or we need to be more flexible on how we do the bookings. Which leads me to my third learning, which is never blame others. This has always been my mentality since I was a teacher. And I always thought it was my fault if a kid didn't learn or if I couldn't change their attitude to learning. But in the end, I believe it's our responsibility to come up with a design and a set of incentives to encourage people to join us. So as we grow the show, that is exactly what we will do. I wanted to share that because I think it's a interesting dynamic. It's an interesting aspect of our business. We share some of the good stuff. We also share some of the challenges as we go through them. Legendary, be curious to hear your thoughts, reflections on how we try to solve this, find a solution for this.
Yeah, it's very interesting, right? Because on the one hand, this show is very established in the way that it runs Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time, 1 hour. And then we had the Friday, the idea, I see you smiling. You know where I'm going with that probably. when we had this idea to expand the Friday and then have 2 hours on Friday with 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern time being the interview. And as you said, like we had the experience with a lot of the people who we had booked in that they at least postponed once until we got it to work. And the one thing that we kind of focused on ever since growing the show is being consistent with the stuff. So a world where we have one Friday with an interview, then the next Friday there's no interview, then there's like 2 in a row, then there's maybe 3 weeks without one, doesn't really work. So then the thing is, you can either book multiple people, do a roundtable with that. You can try to get the founders to commit harder to the interview, which is not really a feasible option. So like maybe the interview slot needs to be more desirable. And the easiest way to make something more desirable is to not give it away for free. So my initial reaction was like, sell the interview slot instead. Because if someone, even if you make it a refundable deposit, but if someone has to deposit 5 or 10K to be interviewed, and then that is refunded once they show up, they have a different set of incentives to actually come to the interview and join that. I don't know if this is the right solution necessarily, because obviously you want to interview interesting founders and people. So just selling that doesn't fix it. But the idea is make it more desirable to show up to that interview, no matter like how busy you are with other stuff. And then the second spin on that was to have a refundable deposit, you know. And if you show up to the interview, you get it back, and if not, I don't know, then the deposit won't be refunded, basically.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. And I think that's why the conversation is interesting, because we're going through it as we speak, figuring out the right way to design this stuff. The alternative one that comes into my mind, Legendary, is like we just got to become so colossal, got to be so huge that it would just be too terrible to cancel. So that's on the table. I'm not opposed to just that being the option. It might take some time to get there, but that is one of the options I am having under consideration. So hope that was an interesting insight behind the scenes and how we're building this stuff out. We appreciate you for joining us and being a part of that journey, and just participating with us as we go through and trying to turn this into the colossal thing that we are intending to. Shout out to Lil Nounsdao for sponsoring the segment. They are an expansion now based on the famous Nounsdao, who fund cool creative endeavors which can proliferate the nounish meme. Let's get into it, starting with the top headline, Legendary. You are wearing a bear on you. It is Bera Chain Day. What are the details we need to know for mainnet? What are the details of the airdrop? And what's interesting about this? Where do you think it's going to come out? How valuable is Bera Chain going to be?
Absolutely. Let's take a look at all things around Bera Chain. First of all, distribution and allocation. It's a token that launches with less than the typical supply that we see in the range from 1 to 10 billion. This one comes out with only 500 million Bera tokens allocated across those 5 categories that I'm sharing on the screen right now. Initial core contributors getting 17%, 34% going to investors, 13% to community initiatives, 16 or 15.8% to be airdropped, 20% to ecosystem and R&D, which if you add all of that together, gets you to a community allocation of 49%. If we break that down a bit further, I'm not going to go through all categories, but there's a couple interesting things in there. So yes, there's an allocation for testnet users. There is a significant allocation, 2% for the RFAs, they call it RFPs, request for proposals, and successful recipients of those. The Boyko launch program, which we touched on the show, for the liquidity vaults that reach 3 billion deposits, will also get rewarded with 2% of the allocation. Then there's this interesting part of the social airdrop, which I'm going to expand on that a bit later, what that means, but definitely there's been a lot of posts on the timeline from content creators who were surprised to find that they have a Bera allocation. Then the ecosystem NFTs, we touched on them yesterday, especially as we talked about CBB, who had collected Bera Chain NFTs worth more than $11 million. Since this token also comes out on Binance, they are partnered up with Binance for the BNB holders, who also get 2% of the token allocation. Strategic partners, and then Bears NFTs and Rebases getting 6.9%. This is the part of the news which we touched on earlier when we said that NFTs basically were also pumping after those tokenomics details came out. Smokey, the Bera chain founder, had something to say on the airdrop as well, saying that airdrops are all about rewarding community that helped your project win. Targeting people perfectly is nearly impossible, especially for a pre-launch product. They consider themselves quite lucky, as they had quite a few ways to show, to see who the people are who really cared, whether it was from the original Bera NFTs, dozens of NFT collections from the ecosystem, yapping on socials, building the ecosystem through RFPs, using apps on the testnet and everything in between. Again, I want to get into the yapping aspect a bit later. What I want to do first, though, is to touch on the valuation. Valuation is fluctuating quite a lot. When I prepared this before the show, we were at $7 for the tokens. Now we are up to 9.35 on Whales Market. Again, keep in mind, this is happening on rather low volume. That's 2.8 million in 24-hour volume for that, which would...
And just for context, Andrew, so a $7 valuation,
$7 would have been 3.5 bill.
3.5, because
now we are
tokens.
Yeah, now we are closer to the $5 billion mark. We are at 4.6-ish with that. The bet we touched on yesterday, which had low volume on Polymarket, has doubled up in volume, still relatively low, 76K in that, but there seems to be a consensus, 50%. The question was Berachain FTV 1 day after launch. That's interesting to keep in mind. It's not today, it's 1 day after launch. And 50% think that this is going to be between 3 and 5 billion, between a $3 and $5 billion FTV 1 day after the launch. And then the part that I wanted to get in separately is exactly the social aspect, the yapping aspect of it, as Berachain has had, I think, one of the earliest leaderboards on Kaito for people specifically talking about Berachain to be tracked on that. And they have received 0.25% of the total token allocation. Had numerous people like Whale. I think Whale was one of the first whom I saw coming out say they get a couple hundred tokens off that. So anywhere, depending on your allocation and where the price goes, between 5K, 10K, just for having talked about Bera. And David Phelps, whose tweet, the co-founder of Jokers, whose tweet I'm sharing on screen currently, also made the point that kind of connects us to the MegaETH stuff that we also talked about, that Berachain MegaETH are changing the game for airdrop farmers by rewarding yappers, by rewarding people who talk about that. And I also think that from Kaito's perspective, that is super interesting, because I'm not going to extend too much into that because then we'd move too far away from Berachain. But really quick, that thought, Kaito is pre-TGE, but people are already making money. Yappers are already making money by quote unquote using Kaito. The cool thing is you don't need to do anything. You just post and have your wallet connected. Obviously, there's like the Yap selling going on, and now there's airdrops going on for just talking about the product. And that's super interesting because you reward people before you even have a token, and Kaito is paying $0 for that. It's protocols who bribe them. It's protocols who airdrop to them. Having that expectation, this is exactly what played out for Bera. They got pre-TG engagement by people who talked about them, some maybe specifically because they've also seen it on Kaito. Now they get rewarded at TG, and the timeline is full with people who, jokingly or half jokingly post, okay, now I'm a Bera mega bull because I got an airdrop and I talked about that. And if you scroll the timeline, you see like 4 or 5 Bera airdrop posts in a row. That is pretty impressive in terms of the mind share that they managed to get by doing that.
Yeah, very much so. I really find that social stuff super interesting. I wonder whether, I just want to go to Sam straight away for your general reflections, maybe if you want to go in the social direction or any others. Then I wanted to touch on valuation a little bit. I'm looking at the numbers. I think a lot of this stuff's locked up at the moment, but I'll take a second on that. Sam, why don't you speak to your thoughts?
I was gonna take the valuation aspect as well, just because we've spoken about pre-market prices quite significantly. I do find that it seems to be inflated, and I'm also curious as to who the buyer is of the token on the other end. So I know there was this concept of like proof of liquidity and the various honey analogies that are in the ecosystem. So if there is like beneficial like yield farming strategies and things like that, I can understand people wanting to buy the token and use it for those benefits. But that is my first like question and challenge, and that's something that I probably want to look into more before thinking that those pre-market prices are accurate. The second question is, okay, well, what happens to the NFTs, the NFT prices once the token launches? Because we saw that with Pudgies. There was an absolute cratering of the price of the NFTs as people basically took or claimed the token, dumped it, and then dumped the NFTs. So I'd be curious to see if that happens again, or whether there's such a strong community that they'll end up just keeping the NFTs for the sake of having the NFTs. Or even if there's any other benefits in the future that will kind of lead to them wanting to hold.
All good questions. I mean, you have to think that with the NFTs themselves, they're going to lose a significant amount of value. I wonder whether I can't see the detail here as to whether the NFTs will get all of those tokens all in one go. I know we've got some super knowledgeable Bera chain people in the show. We've got Patrick.
I think it's 25% that unlock instantly and the rest is vested.
25, do you say?
I think so. Yeah, let me double check that real quick.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, if you double check that, I was just going to shout out Patrick, who's listening in the audience. I've been chatting with them about the Bera chain stuff. There's some super passionate Bera chain people. I'm sure they know the answer. If you shoot us a comment on Twitter, you might be able to bring your comment up. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on is the token release schedule. When you're thinking about valuations for this stuff, obviously you want to know how much stuff is circulating, right? So I'm looking at this here, and this has, so remember, if you're new here, we're streaming the show on video as well. We're live on YouTube as well as to our personal profiles and the Modern Market account video if you prefer to watch in. So what you can see is the token release schedule. You've got the initial unlock, and after a 1-year cliff, a sixth of allocated tokens are unlocked. But what it looks like, so you've got 500 million tokens in total. And for the first 12 months, you have only 100 million circulating. So that's 20% will be circulating for 12 months. I think that's actually, I know people might instinctively say that's low. I think that's probably a bit higher than what people would have expected for chains, because I think sometimes people have really milked this like low float, high FTV chain launches before and been as low as maybe 10% at the beginning. Obviously, since other tokens have come to market and the people have gone much higher. Hyperliquid was much higher. And I think people are kind of encouraged to start at a lower valuation, have more supply out, and kind of build wealth with their community. So it's 20% is that number. So any thoughts on the number here then, Legendary? And just full disclosure, we have some tokens. How much did we have? I think I've shared that I have like 600 or something from the social aspect. I think Sammy, you shared you've got like 700 something. But I typically also don't trade these. So when I can feel pretty casual about throwing out valuations for these, because I know some people will be like, I need to buy the airdrop sell off in order to make the 2x or make a 1.5x something. But I typically don't do that. It pains me too much, the idea that this is a free day to get tokens, and to lose money on that day would just hurt me too much. So I prefer to trade other stuff. But any reflections here, boys?
Yeah, first of all, just a quick correction for the Bong Bears. So that's the Bong Bears and the rebase collections based on them, basically, who receive the 34.5 million Bera, split equally across those collections with 25 million tokens. That was the 25 that I remembered, which is 5% of the tokens unlocking at launch. And the remaining 9.5 million is 1.9%. They are on the vesting schedule as all the insiders, consisting of a 1-year cliff, followed by a 6th unlock, and then 24 months of linear vesting. So you unlock a good part of that initially. So basically, you have to look at that in relative numbers, like it's 6.9% in total, and 5% is unlocked initially, not 5% of the 6.9%. And to the trading thing, I'm in the same camp, honestly. I've seen so many airdrops over the last years in crypto, and most of them, with a few exceptions, follow the same pattern, that there's a massive sell-off and the protocols who remain relevant and survive see a revival phase typically there was I think Miles Deutscher was the one who shared that chart at some point. Typically see this revival 6 to 9 months after the TG. So I'm happy to typically sell all of my airdrops and then just, keep track of the things I find interesting and buy in later. But I'm not too good. It's just not my skill set to swing trade airdrops on TGE day.
Yeah, I think, well, there's a risk it might do a hyperliquid though, in which case you're pretty fucked. So that's that. I'm the same with you guys. Like I don't trade airdrops, to be honest. I think like especially ones where you don't have that knowledge advantage. Like I think with the Bera chain ecosystem, it's so complex and there's so many nuances to it that these guys have been in it for what is it, 2 years or 18 months that it's been going for. So there's obviously a lot of knowledge that I don't have. So to try and trade it would just be a distinct disadvantage.
Good point. Unfair advantages. Lean into where you have one. Take a step back when you don't have them. I think that's completely fair. Okay, interesting stuff. I think that's like a helpful summary of what's going on there. I think we can probably move on. Talked about valuation, talked about supply, talked about some of the more cultural stuff with the NFTs. Yeah, let's leave it there. Good luck. Good luck to Bera Chain. Right, let's keep it moving. Sam, moving into maybe the more corporate universe. What's the stuff about Ondo Finance, bringing stocks on chain? What's going on?
Yeah, so Ondo Finance is a pretty sizable protocol. I think its market cap's around about 4 billion mark. FDV maybe 13 or so billion. So they're unveiling the Ondo Global Markets, which is a blockchain-based protocol or platform for tokenizing real-world assets. So specifically, US equities, bonds, ETFs, basically enabling non-US investors to get access to US investments on chain. So using stable coins to kind of deploy into that. So I think there's a few additional benefits through maybe reduced fees, enhanced transparency. So you'll be able to see all those trades go through, and then just a broader access and liquidity through to US equity markets. And I do wonder whether there'll be an RWA tokenization push as a new narrative that comes through over the next couple of months. I've seen a few like big accounts start to talk about that kind of stuff. But I think for me, I'm going to stick to the AI stuff just because that's where my bread and butter is. But RWA could be something to watch over the coming months.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Legendary, you've just brought up the chart down 4% on the day after the big announcement. Like that a lot. What are your thoughts here, Legendary? I know you've spoken about from a personal perspective that if you are going to de-risk kind of out of crypto, you don't feel like there's any point in just still being on chain because that's still kind of exposure to being on chain. If you're going to de-risk, you might as well take it out fully. I think this is still a super cool opportunity for people who don't have the usual access to some of these things, to some of these instruments, to some of these shares, to participate via stablecoins. I really think, I mean, we've been saying it all the time, and I think the current administration is also going to be planning to push this message a lot. Stablecoins are a huge unlock, obviously, for crypto. It's one of the best use cases, and to be able to now access the US markets with it will be really big. I don't know if that necessarily translates to token price, but Legendary, what's your reflection here?
Yeah, I think Ondo is a pretty cool protocol. I think Biddle by BlackRock uses it. Franklin Templeton uses it. They have yield products in USDC for institutions or institutional grade products. I think you can even do short-term US treasuries on Ondo. So they started with those like quote unquote like more institutional things in mind first. Let me bring that up quickly here. And obviously expanding on that sector, which I think is pretty cool. And I kind of keep going back and forth. Like I know I said, if the thing that I want to do in real life with off-ramp money, I want it to not necessarily, I want it to be invested, but not be on chain. But for some other things, it's just so convenient to do it on chain, especially if you have more money there. And some things you can't even get exposure to as easily. It goes back to my favorite example of, that's not Ondo, that's a different protocol, who's bringing uranium on chain.
Yeah,
and
you're obsessed with uranium.
Yeah, I know I am. It's not an easy market to necessarily trade for, get exposure to. And doing that on chain is pretty cool. And I think that's going to be the same for some more specific RWAs that you will maybe have a harder time to access off-chain than on-chain.
So with that, with the uranium, do you just get exposure to the price action of the uranium, or do you take delivery of the actual uranium? Is it like futures market, or is it spot?
It's a spot market actually, and I think they do have. It's like they claim that it's backed. I don't think it has launched yet, but they do claim it's backed by like physical uranium that is somewhere, but you don't have obviously to take custody of that. Yeah, I just double checked. It is physical backed uranium, but obviously they keep custody of that, and you don't do that.
There's no redeemable option for your uranium. Not trusted to hold the uranium yourself. Okay, interesting stuff. I have noticed as I write the news every day, I do all the research pre-show and do this stuff. The trend has been since the turn of the year for there to be more headlines that we've always got on-chain headlines, right? We've always got runners, we've got things going crazy, we've got Bera chain NFTs going to 100 ETH. Yeah, we will always talk about those, but there has just been an uptick in corporate news, and I think that's always interesting to cover too. So we'll keep doing that. I'm just noticing that movement and that increased output from that side of the universe. Okay, we have 8 minutes left of the show today. Let's keep it moving to the final headline, which is about Movement Labs. Founder Rushi announced he will be advising Thailand on their digital asset rollout. When I first heard that, I was like, oh, that is a bit out of left field. Then more thought about it. Thought it was kind of cool. Legendary, what's going on here? What's the news? And why do you think it's important?
Yeah, you said it at the top of the show that Rushi is going to become Thailand's official advisor for all things digital currencies. To be more specific on that, it is, let me bring the article up on screen. There we go. It is the Thailand International Digital Business and Financial Center who has appointed Rushi as one of the two advisors. And that, again, the TIDC is a collaboration supported by Thailand's Ministry of Digital Economy and Society, National Telecom Public Company Limited, and they say that they aim to foster a digital-first ecosystem, attract digital business investments, drive digital innovation in Thailand, which makes a ton of sense. To have other countries who are jumping onto that bandwagon of wanting to have some sort of Web3 exposure. It also makes sense if you look at population flow specifically. Obviously, we talked a lot on the show how many people are moving to Dubai. I think that last year alone, the statistic that I found, it was more than 6,000 millionaires moving to Dubai, most of them leaving China, UK, and Russia. But there's also a significant move from other countries to Thailand, as well as people from Dubai who are moving out to Thailand. So there is the competition basically in wanting to garner to crypto first, Web3 natives, however you want to call those people, is definitely increasing. So it makes sense from this perspective, but it also makes sense to think about a like government-wide, country-wide strategy, how you want to embrace, deal with digital assets, deal with cryptocurrencies, especially obviously after the thing we've talked about so often on the show, after the US is taking this very pro-crypto approach under Trump too.
Yeah, I like it. Excellent summary. Really interested in the kind of the population flows, right? I think there's some interesting graphs that exist on showing where the money is migrating to. That's definitely an interesting one to watch. Just to give some extra context on what Rushi tweeted, he said, Thailand, like many emerging markets, are quickly growing their digital asset strategy, especially with the American sign-off. These regions are most keen for crypto due to weak currencies, underbanked individuals, and eagerness for fast-paced markets. This is, one of the core thesis for crypto, probably, defend yourself against your government, against your weak currency. Few initiatives we're spending time with, and so he lists 3 important aspects: national stablecoin, tokenization, and issuance. So that's interesting. I've always thought that other countries should not bother with their stablecoins, because I think it's clear that there is demand for one stablecoin, and that is the US dollar. Second, decentralized training for AI networks. Interesting, that's in there as like one of the 3 things that they mentioned. And then finally, strategic reserves for assets like Bitcoin, ETH, and of course Move, given that he is running Movement Labs. Looking forward to making Movement and the broader crypto market a core part of the Thai economy. Sam, question for you here. Just from the AI perspective, it was interesting to see that there. Do you have any thoughts there? Maybe a more general perspective on, like, is this going to be for founders? One thing triggered in my head when I saw this. You know how Web3 is a pretty unforgiving place, right? Like, you're trying to run a blockchain, and if you're doing anything else, if you're going on holiday, if you're like doing something else that might be adjacent to your company, there's like criticisms like, should you be doing this? Should you be focusing on this? You know, it sounds like this might be not necessarily a personal advisory, but it's, you know, Movement Labs advisory to a country. Do you think this is going to be like one of the things that founders are going to need to do for blockchains? Go out there, onboard countries to your chain. Is that going to be like one of the expectations moving forward?
Well, I think even outside of crypto, people do that, right? They set up offices in different jurisdictions to then have that local presence. Like, I think Japan was a big one for all the companies I used to work with. Like, the culture and stuff was very different there, and they wouldn't necessarily interact the same way with the Western world that they would with like local Japanese, just because of the culture and how they would like. It's just like different nuanced things. Like, you'd always put your hands together and you'd say san at the end. So I'd be like Sam San. And it's just like those small little cultural things that you don't necessarily pick up unless you have a local presence. And I think that courtesy extends beyond global borders. And I think it's just easier to have that local presence to then have that stronger relationship with whoever those key clients might be. And I think the same is going to be the case for crypto and blockchains. Like, if you've got a protocol, it doesn't matter where it's based. Or if it's a global protocol, it would need to have a local presence sometimes with specific jurisdictions, because it will have a greater impact.
Yeah, I'm always, one of my key reflections in general in this space is that no matter how decentralized we think it is, and no matter how much you think people can just go off and do different things, and it doesn't matter where you're from, and it doesn't matter like your background and all these things, which I think 9 times out of 10 it doesn't. There's still this importance of localities. Taking a completely different example, we've been talking about pudgy penguins a lot today, but like pudgy penguins, I believe, and I think chimpers did this as well. I was like quite closely affiliated with chimpers for a long time. I still think they're doing an awesome job. When they were thinking about how to build out their community, they have specific subsets done and divided up by nationality or by regions. So pudgy penguins will have pudgy Malaysia, pudgy Asia, pudgy Europe, pudgy France. And chimpers did a very similar thing where they had this map, and if you hold the NFT, you could see where your holders were. You could maybe reach out then and become more connected. And so it's one of the obvious things that even though we are in a much borderless place than before, and we have all this access to each other and we can communicate with each other so easily. The importance of regional communities and onboarding people probably step by step, region by region, definitely still exists. Any final reflections there, Sam, since I was responding to you, or Legendary, before we close out the show?
No reflections here. Ready to wrap up?
No reflections, Legendary. I've got 2 bits of news if you don't have anything.
Yeah, I got 2 bits of news. Maybe we have the same bits of news, right? Bera chain just launched.
Yes.
It's news number 1, and Pengu has a Kaito leaderboard is news number 2.
God damn it.
Bringing the breaking news as well. Also, maybe really quick, Funky has had his hand up for a while, so would love to hear from Funky for a final reflection on everything we've just been speaking on, and then close it out for the day. But not without saying that we have 5.1k people watching live on video today, which is a record number for the modern market.
There you go. Absolutely love it. Funky, you got to top that news to close out the show. How you doing, my friend? Welcome to the stage.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to say congratulations. I've seen this for a long time coming. I'm not the least bit surprised. 10,000 is inbound very soon. And I just wanted to say about the whole thing with Rushi, I'm not surprised, right? I mean, Southeast Asia largely has been a huge adopter of crypto. And, you know, when the movement token was running, when a lot of the market was down, apparently a lot of that inflow was coming from South Korea. They, for some reason, are really into the whole move VM. So, you know, just thinking of the proximity. And then I'm sure it helped to have the crypto czar himself, David Sachs, with a big smile on his face, pointing at Rushi, at the crypto ball. And, you know, I just feel like the connection there with the US sign off, quote unquote, as you guys said, really does explain a lot. But fantastic show as always, guys.
Appreciate it, man. Good call out on that language. Yeah, it said in his tweet with American sign off. Interesting stuff. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for the additional context. Thank you all for joining us. As always, reminder, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour. You can catch us live in the Twitter space, or we are streaming video to YouTube and Twitter. And you can catch up with us also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify too. Thank you to Legendary and Sammy for co-hosting with me today. Thank you to Funky for coming in with that extra insight. As always, have a wonderful day. Take care, and we will see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.